Okay. Then we'll talk about sleeping, and Jay's going to talk about that.
All right. Do you want to click through until stuff starts showing up on here?
So there's function. You want to talk about that first? And
Sure. As far as before even picking out a sleeping bag, you should probably identify your needs and preferences. And considerations should include temperature and moisture conditions that you'll most frequently be camping in, and whether you plan to zip it together with another bag, the interior fabric preference and weight. And you may also purchase a bag that comes in pairs with the right and left zipper to share sleeping space with somebody else, or a mummy bag. And we'll talk about that as we go through them. Some other things that come into effect are the temperature rating, size, weight, cost, durability. And as far as the temperature rating goes, there's different brands out there that will say what they are, whether it's a 10 degree, 15, 20, 25 degree bag, just saying what it's rated for. And there's different ratings for men and women. But overall, there's a European standard that's called the EN rating for sleeping bags. And currently, that's probably the most accurate rating there is for a sleeping bag that has a standard rating. Otherwise, you're at the mercy of the manufacturer's perceived temperature rating. The size of the bags also are a different cut for men and women, and where there's more insulation or not. And then as far as weight goes, there's synthetic insulation, which offers solid performance at a more affordable price. And unlike down, which is going to be the other option, it continues to insulate when it's wet. So it's the bag insulation of choice for damp climates, although it does weigh more. And they're available in a variety of branded names, and most are made out of synthetics and polyesters. And as far as a down sleeping bag goes, as on a per pound basis, they insulate a lot more, but they offer far less value when they get wet. I will say newer down sleeping bags have come a long, long ways compared to the traditional ones as far as being water resistant or even waterproof. And it is quite an amazing bag from where they used to be.
yeah, and I've heard that a down bag will be, if you take good care of it, it'll last longer than a synthetic. That synthetic tends to lose their insulating properties over time much faster than down. I haven't owned a synthetic bag, so I can't say from my own experience, but that's just what I've heard.
So I've owned one of each, and truthfully, I go to the down so much I haven't had any issues with the synthetic bag losing any of its value. But I will also say storing your sleeping bag is probably one of the more pertinent things that I do as far as keeping them open and not in a compressed state while you store them. The only time they're compressed is while they're in a stuff sack when I'm backpacking as well. And I don't know how you store yours, Steve, but...
Oh, yeah. A lot of bags, they come with a big bag that, so they're not compressed much. And I just store it in one of these big bags that come in.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I do as well. And as far as the design of bags, we'll address those in coming slides as far as the quilts and the pads that you can get and integrated systems and hammocks. So we can click on to the next. Insulated, treated down. Yeah, so as far as insulation goes, we talked about synthetic versus down. And then as far as the rating system goes, the most consistent one you can get is the EN rating or the European standard.
So you see the down, there are different qualities of down, which is measured in what's called fill, which is in cubic inches per ounce. And so you want the higher fill means it's going to fill a larger volume for its weight and give you more insulation. So the higher fill tends to cost more, but it also gives you more insulation value. But you should always get treated down because then it's going to work better when it gets damp.
Steve or Jay, can you elaborate more on storing your bag when you're not on a trip?
Sure. As Steve was saying, they usually come with an extra, probably cotton bag. I'm not actually sure what the storing bag is made out of, but it's probably about the size of a 40-gallon sack. And basically that just allows you to store your sleeping bag inside of something so it doesn't collect dust or bugs or anything like that. And we actually store ours just hanging from the ceiling just so it's not sitting on the floor. That way it's as full as it can be without being fully open across the floor. Did that answer the question you had, Casey?
Yep, I believe so. Haley, did that answer your question? Yeah, I think our question's answered.
Any more questions?
As far as is it bad to store compressed, I would mainly say it's not ideal, especially for a down sleeping bag. That's probably the most unideal for that. Synthetic, you can get away with a little more, but even that has a hard time recovering from being compressed for too long.
Casey, did you get Ernie's question in there?
Yep, I'm working it right now.
Okay.
Oh.
I know I'm emailing you or messaging you too, so I didn't want to mess up your MC commenting, questioning. So back to you.
Yeah, so so Steve and Jay, Ernie's question was, what is the R value of the pad that they use to do the European norm test? And
Casey.
so I've got some background noise going on, so I'm going to go back to the group chat to answer that.
Oh, it's Casey's background, yeah? Okay.
One of the other questions is do we hang it up like they do in the stores? You can do that, but realistically, as long as it's just not compressed, you can store it in a nice breathable bag, and as long as it's not compressed down, that's the ideal situation. It doesn't have to be hanging, doesn't have to be laid out, just open to breathe a little bit.
Hey guys, I was troubleshooting some background noise, so let us know real quick in the chat if we haven't got your question, because I think we might have missed some and I don't want to duplicate what Casey was doing, and I honestly wasn't listening to them while I was working on a different issue. So just drop it in the chat real quick and we'll catch everybody up. I saw one in there about, where did it go? Trail weight versus packed weight. Did you already answer that one? Okay, let me go back and find that one real quick. What is packaged weight versus trail weight? Did you answer that one already?
I have not. Do you know the answer to that, Steve?
Well, I would say the package weight probably includes that storage bag. Now you do, of course, want to put your sleeping bag in a bag in your pack that's going to be a lot smaller than that storage bag. And that's something we don't really have a slide on, but how big that bag needs to be depends upon how, what sort of down you have in terms of the fill and how warm the bag is and what size it is. But I think, I'm not sure, maybe
Sokum, does that answer your question, or do you have?
a 15-liter bag was, I think, about right.
Okay.
I'm not sure what I use.
Package
But-
weight, 12 weight.
And it should be a waterproof bag too, because you always want to keep your sleeping bag protected in your pack when you're hiking.
And Steve or Jay, did you guys already do the temp ratings of the bag on a pad of R4? Did you already do that one?
No, so as far as pads go, that's coming up here in a minute. And it looks like do different size bags for different size people exist. In general, yes, there's two sizes. There's a regular and then a long. And usually if you're about 6 foot and over, you'll buy a long. And if you're 6 foot and under, you'll buy a regular.
Unless you don't like to get cold, like me.
And that's totally fine as well.
Yeah.
And a men's sleeping bag is generally wider than a women's, and a women's generally has more of an hourglass cut than, what do you use, Dana? Is there a Dana on here, or are we referring to my wife, Dana?
So sleeping bag ratings are often going to be similar to clothing. People are going to sleep cold, people are going to sleep hot, and people are going to be in the middle. The most important thing about the EN standard is that it's a standard test now, as opposed to just the manufacturer telling you what they think it is. It's a standard test, and so if you know that you sleep cold, you can compare apples to apples across different manufacturers.
Thanks, Casey.
Yeah, so when you guys get to the part about the R4 SOCM, then just drop your question in there if you still have a question after they go over that, because I say you're saying that we kind of answered your question, so keep it and drop it back in there. And Dory, I'm a little claustrophobic. Remember, I'm not an instructor. I'm a little claustrophobic, and I crawled into some of those in REI, and I said, I don't want to do this. So I actually got a longer one and a wider one because that's just how I roll. So I probably don't meet the ultralight packing requirements. Steve would probably say, I don't know what Steve would say. Hey, if it works for you, you're carrying it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was just me. Somebody's asking, what is a 0 degree bag? Can you answer that, one of you, Jay or Steve?
Yeah, so I own a 0 degree bag, and I should really own about a 30 degree bag. I'm really never in any condition where I need a 0 degree bag. And a 0 degree means it's rated down to 0 degrees Fahrenheit, which I wouldn't really care to be in those conditions anyway, snow camping. That's just kind of a harsh climate to be in anyway. So I would say for most people, if you got between a 20 and 30 degree bag, that's probably the most ideal. And if you ended up with a 30 and you felt like that wasn't sufficient enough, you can get sleeping bag insert liners, and they can be different materials, anything from flannel to synthetics. And those can usually add about a 10 degree rating to it. So you can take a 30 degree down to a 20 degree. And I've used those before, and those seem to work really well. And the other nice thing about using a sleeping bag liner is it also keeps the inside of your sleeping bag cleaner longer.
And if I tend to sleep cold, and if I'm cold, I'll wear my down jacket inside my sleeping bag, and that really helps.
I tend to use the sleeping bag that I have that's 0 degrees more as a quilt, which we'll address here in a couple of slides also. We can go ahead and click onto the next slide.
Okay.
Steve. All right, this right here is what's called a mummy bag, meaning that the top of it flips up just like a mummy has. And if you've got two different options right here. You've got the Kelty Cosmic Down, and that's a 20 degree bag, which weighs 40 ounces for $180, or you can spend a little bit more for the REI, which is also a 20 degree bag, which weighs 31 ounces. Generally, the more you spend, the lighter it's going to weigh. But as Steve was mentioning earlier, there's also good ways to buy things used from eBay, Facebook Marketplace to REI garage sales. Though these seem like a high number, I would say besides the tent, the sleeping bag is probably the #1 most important thing to have in case you get caught in some situation where you're slightly hypothermic. It's good to crawl into a nice quality bag. My bag and tent are probably the most expensive and quality things I own, and then I probably have a 20 degree or a 20-year-old pack that I use, if not slightly older.
You can spend a
Jay,
lot
you wanna-
more. Go ahead, Casey.
I was going to ask Jay to elaborate on how his 0 degree bag works in warmer temperatures.
Oh, that's easy. It doesn't. It really does not work at all in warm temperature at all. I also have a 40 or 50 degree synthetic sleeping bag for warmer weather that I carry around. I don't really have anything for that in between. But as I was saying earlier, I don't do a ton of summer camping, but when I do, I bring a super light bag, and I also have a liner that you can throw on if that's not quite enough, because even if you have a 50-degree bag and you're in 35, 40-degree weather, that's a pretty chilly night. So I'd always make sure to either layer well or bring a sleeping bag liner, or just be prepared for unexpected situations.
Yeah.
I've started a backpacking trip in the beginning of August one year, and it was 100 degrees when I left the Tri-Cities and went up in the Canadian mountains and got caught in a snowstorm, and was not ready for that for 10 days. But luckily, between myself and other people, we made it through the whole thing, then came back to summer in the Tri-Cities.
Yeah, one reason there's a difference in price and weight between the REI and the Kelty packs is that the Cosmic Down uses 600 fill down, which is quite a lot cheaper, but heavier. And then the REI, I'm pretty sure those ones use 700 fill. There are some bags that are made of 800 and even 850 fill down, and they just get to be more expensive. You can spend a lot more money, $300 or $400 on a sleeping bag.
I want to say mine was...
Steve, can you elaborate on fill and what that means?
Yeah, fill, as I said, fill is the volume divided by the weight. And so the volume of air that's rendered still, so there's no circulation in your bag. It's basically the volume of your bag divided by the weight of the fill in the bag. And so more volume means more insulation. So a bigger fill is going to be warmer.
Yeah, so in general, the higher the fill number, the warmer it is for the same weight.
Yeah.
All right, I think we can jump on, or do we have any? No, it doesn't look like we have any questions. All right, sleeping pads. This is definitely a great way to have a pleasant trip depending on what you pick out. There is, in general, 3 types of sleeping pads. There's self-inflating, air, and closed cell foam. When car camping, weight's not an issue, so you can enjoy a thicker, wider pad or mattress for comfort. But when backpacking, weight is more important, so a super lightweight air pad or a closed cell foam pad may be your optimal choice. As far as self-inflating pads go, there's not one pictured on the screen, but they offer a combination of open-celled foam insulation and air. And opening the valve allows the foam to expand and bring in air automatically. Some are specifically designed for backpacking and can be folded lengthwise then rolled up to fit inside your pack. And self-inflating pads offer you a broad range of options for warmth, size, and cost. And then the next one down, we have what is called an air pad, and they come in a variety of, hold on, I had another note. For self-inflating pads, they're also generally more comfortable and reasonably compact, and the price point on those are generally a little bit better since they'll weigh a little bit more as a result of the foam inside of them. And then on your screen, we have this yellow pad, and that's an air pad, and it comes in a variety of styles, from lightweight ones for backpacking to extra thick ones for, I guess, what we call glamping or more just a weekend trip. Most air pads now contain insulation and reflective material to increase the warmth, whereas previously, since there's no foam inside of it, you could lose some heat through that while sleeping directly on it. And many pads feature alternative inflation methods, so you don't necessarily just have to use your breath on doing it. One drawback to an air pad is if it is cooler weather and you're inflating with your mouth, you'll get more condensation inside of it, which can lead to, I guess, straight up mold inside of it. Occasionally can happen, and that can deteriorate the inside quality of the air mattress, but they're getting better at getting past that currently.
And that's what that device on the lower right is, an air pump that attaches to the nozzle on your air pad. And then you can just open up that air pump, let some air in there and close it up, and then push the air into your pad. It takes about 3 pumps to pump up your air pad without getting any moisture inside it.
Thanks, Steve. The other nice thing about it is you can let air in out to adjust the firmness and comfort level of it. And there's a ton of different options when it comes to air pads as far as size and weight. The women's pad will generally be skinnier than a men's, and just like the sleeping bag, they also come in regular and long lengths as well. And then the next one is closed cell foam, and that's what you see in the top right, which has some yellow and mainly silver on it. And those are made out of dense foam with tiny closed air cells in between, and they're usually rolled up or folded in a Z formation, and this one up here ends up getting folded in a Z formation. The pros of it is they're lightweight and they're reasonably inexpensive. They're pretty durable and offer consistent insulation in all conditions. You don't need to worry about punctures or leaks whatsoever because it's just closed cell foam. And they work great underneath other types of pads to improve insulation and prevent punctures. I personally will pack a closed cell foam along with a self-inflating air mattress and put the air pad on top of this one in snowy conditions for extra insulation. If you're just using the closed cell pad by themselves, they're not necessarily all that comfortable by themselves, and they're relatively stiff and firm, but they do offer good insulation properties. Do you have any comments you want to add on that one, Steve?
Yeah. As you said, the closed cell foam was maybe, I don't know, 3/4 of an inch, maybe an inch thick. These air pads are typically 2.5, 3 inches thick. There's a lot of cush there. And I have to say, in my lifetime, I have noticed that the ground has gotten significantly harder over the years. And so I really appreciate having a nice cushy air pad.
Thanks. We can click on to the next one. All right, quilts are pretty neat. As you can see in the bottom right corner, they open up in kind of a Y formation, and it's something, this is for somebody who sleeps generally warmer. That way it's easier to open up as you sleep through the night. And they sleep a lot like a mummy bag in colder conditions. Probably one of the negatives on it is on super cold nights, it's not nearly as sealed as a standard bag or a mummy bag. It is easier to control temperature, and it's easier to get in and out of, though. And they work well with any pad as well.
Yeah, I use a quilt. I use it on the PCT, and you do have to, they have straps that strap it onto your air pad, but you do have to be careful that you don't lose cold air when you turn around in the middle of the night, because it's cold. If you're thinking about a quilt, I would recommend Enlighten Equipment. You can choose the fill down type, the length of the bag, the girth, the temperature rating, the color on the inside and the outside, and they're quite a good value, I thought. And that the numbers I gave there for this 800 fill bag, that's about what I have, and that's good value. And very light.
Awesome. Thanks, Steve.
And I think one reason for a quilt is when you're in a mummy bag, whatever part of your body you're laying on, you're getting almost no insulation value from the down that you're sleeping on. The down on the tops and sides is insulating you, but you are squishing down that down beneath you. And so why bother with having a bag underneath you? You're getting your underside insulation is from your pad. And so a quilt just doesn't bother with having a down underneath you.
All right, integrated systems are pretty cool. I personally haven't tried it out, but I'd be interested in trying it out. They provide a unique draping effect that feels more like a comforter on your bed. And when the insulation material is compressed under your body, it doesn't lose most of its insulative properties. And the bottom of the bag is replaced with insulation. The bottom of the bag is your sleeping pad, and under the pad is the rest of your sleeping bag. And this design also provides a secure foundation to sleep on so you don't slide off your pad during the night, which is a real thing. I occasionally wake up a few times a night just to slide back up on my pad if we're on any sort of incline. They're pretty neat, but they usually cost a little bit more because they're integrated as a bag and a sleeping bag all in one. I wouldn't imagine, Steve, have you ever done that, or Casey?
No.
Okay. I haven't actually seen one in action, but they seem like a neat idea for the sake of not sleeping, slipping off the pad.
Yep, I actually use the Big Agnes Zircle 20, and I used to have a Q-Core. Now I use a Thermarest pad.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's great because I never fall off my pad. It's always there. I never have to wake up to readjust. One of the things I don't like about it is it does lock your sleeping bag in that position. So if you're a side sleeper, or if you have more gear in your sleeping bag because you're trying to dry it out, it can get a little cramped. There's not as much room to like shuffle around and move your feet. But a lot of brands like Thermarest are starting to come up with their own solutions and put like straps underneath the bag. So it's not completely integrated, but it does strap onto the pad.
Okay.
Awesome. And I think the last slide we have is hammocks, or as far as tenting option goes, is hammocks. This is a pretty fancy hammock right here. Oh, well, I shouldn't say fancy. This will keep rain off in weather, and not all hammocks come with the extra cover that's on top of this one. But in general, hammocks are a nice substitution for a traditional tent because they're pretty easy to set up and lightweight, and they can be much more affordable than other options. The drawbacks to it are you do need to be hiking somewhere where there's trees, which excludes a lot of things around the Tri-Cities, but getting up into the mountains, it's a great option for that. My wife does like to pack this in occasionally and at least hang out during the day, but occasionally sleeps in it as well. You ever play with these, Steve?
No. And they do have, if it's cold, you need to have insulation under you, and they have a way of dealing with that. I'm not sure quite how that works.
Yeah, I was going to say the other issue why I don't sleep in them is just the fact that you're kind of in that permanent curved position all night.
Yeah.
So that's what I have to say on that.
All right. Any more questions?